there's a lot of time poverty in the wealthiest individuals in this world. They are programmed from youth to work, 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 trade their time for money, and they're really good at it. And then when it comes for trading their money for time, they have no idea how to do it. And then they do the worst thing in the world when it comes to financial investing. They intuitively believe that they can invest their time into low risk, short-term investments and have high returns. That's never going to work in the world of financial investing, right? Like cash and savings is never going to give you high returns. So they invest themselves into the comfort of the same routine, the nice house, the same pool, the same places on vacation, great food, all of the luxuries of life. And none of those have a higher risk, longer term time element. And they're missing out on life.
There is a point where more is just not going to cut it because you don't know how to receive. But what worked for me and what I think really works well with a good therapist, that's how we increase our capacity to receive care, to receive beauty in a way that we don't need to accumulate it and hold on to it.
When life seems to give you no choices, all that's left is the hard ones. You're gonna have to do the hard thing. You're gonna have to quit the relationship. You're gonna have to leave the job. You're gonna have to move out of town. You're gonna have to not talk to those people. You're gonna have to, whatever that hard, stupid, hard thing is, you're gonna have to do it. Doesn't
Mm.
mean you don't have options. It just means the hard ones are what's left.
Welcome to another episode of the Being in Leading podcast, a podcast where we talk about staying true to yourself and talking to inspiring people who build real connections and create success on their own terms. And what I strive here is to have honest conversations about leadership that feels right, not just looks right. And I'm really excited about my guest tonight, John Coyle, who I think has a lot to say about leadership and about getting to the top, understanding that something doesn't really work, and then rebuilding from a new set of values, which I think is an invaluable thing to have the ability to do. And we have named this episode "Living Within the Context of Time." And then we will explain why, but I think being alive in the context of time, and I think that's something that's a really important topic about me. It's not only about um, knowing, having awareness of time, but really using it in a way that feels right for us. So welcome, John, and I'm really glad that you took the time to be here.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I normally start this podcast by asking you, what are some words that you would describe yourself with? So it can be nouns, adjectives, but just few words that you would want people to know you about, know you for.
Oh, well, that's a good one. I think, I hope that I'm curious. I hope that I'm relatively fearless. Um, I think I've been willing to take risks that most people wouldn't in my past lives to become the person I can hopefully be. And I'm not funny. Probably you are, but I'm not. But I like funny people, so I like to surround myself with funny people. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, that would be my start.
Mm-hmm. And you said that you had several past lives, and I think that's a really I think peculiar thing about you. So I would want our listeners to know what are those and what took to build it and leave it.
So I grew up, I was a normal kid. I grew up with, a normal family, but I stumbled into being good at some sports. And so I eventually became an Olympic athlete in the sports of speed skating and cycling and took all those all the way to the world championships and the Olympics. And that was my first life. Uh, and I retired from that at 30. So I had to get a real job and like join the real working world. So I went into corporate life and built a career as a corporate athlete, climbing the ranks there, and went to some of the higher rungs of the Fortune 500 in the US. And then another 10 years ago, I quit all of that and I started a whole new business as an entrepreneur, as a speaker and writer. And that's what I do now.
Hmm. And do you mind if we go stage by stage and
Please.
see what made you who you are today? So before the athletics, what do you remember bringing you joy when you were a kid?
I mean, I was just really lucky to stumble into my very, very limited gifts as an athlete. So I have no hand-eye coordination. I can barely feed myself. I'm like a T-Rex of a human being. Like I can't play ping pong, golf, bowling, none of those sports, but I'm pretty good with my legs. And so when I was 8 years old, my father took me onto some bicycling tours, and I ended up doing 13 100-mile rides, so 13 160-kilometer rides as an 8-year old, which probably only one kid on the planet did that year.
Wow.
And I just, I developed this capacity for leg sports, and so I continued to bike race and speed skate. I grew
So
up
so
skating as
13
well.
13 races of 160 kilometers in a year. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, when I was 8.
Oh, wow. I need to slow down to take that information in.
So it
Uh,
was a lot, right? I loved it. So I found the thing that I was good at when I was really young, and
mm,
I continued to race bicycles and develop into the sport, and went on to go to be able to compete in the Olympics, and that was my first life, and it was a good life. It was a simple life.
so I was wanting to know there, um, wh what was as an 8-year-old, what's your motivation to go that far?
I just liked doing it, honestly. And,
Mm.
maybe part of it was every other person on the ride was probably an older person, and they were like, what is this little child doing out here? So there might have been a little bit of that, but I found what I was really good at. I loved riding bikes, still do. I ride my bike every day.
Mm.
So I found my joy early, and I was lucky to do so. And it became, a sport that I was able to compete at the highest levels as well.
Mm. So, what has being a sportsman taught you about life? What are some of the values or some of the experiences that you feel sports have has instilled the way of living that has instilled in you and kind of helped you to be shaped in some way?
Well, I won't answer the obvious way because, we wouldn't be here if we were going to do that. The obvious things are, if you work hard, you get results, generally speaking. That's not fun, and let's not talk about that. What I actually learned was that time itself is a very ephemeral concept, that the passage of time in sports in tiny little increments, right? Hundreds of seconds determine gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal, that we experience time in moments, and those moments shape our future trajectory. So just as an athlete gets a medal or they don't, they move on to the next level or they don't, they go to the Olympics or they don't. All those happen in moments. Real life's just like that. You asked the girl out or you didn't. You took the exit or you didn't. You avoided the car crash or you didn't. She said yes or she didn't. You took the promotion across town or you didn't. You started the podcast or you didn't. All those were moments. Granted, there may be weeks, months, and years leading up to life that affect our outcome. And that was the biggest learning I had from sports. It's the same in real life.
Mm. And so, in which way are you seeing that now with the experience you have, um, and all the things you've done afterwards? What is it that knowing that these are moments and that decisions we make in these moments are pivotal in where we're going to end up? What is it that helps you having this knowledge right now? What is it in that knowledge, in that insight, that is supportive for you?
Well, it's really designing for those moments, right? So run through a year and have a relative routine existence, but that one time you pull a coworker aside and have the courage to tell them what they need to hear, or you You make the effort to connect with somebody at the last minute after a long meeting, like those are the things that are going to matter. The rest of it doesn't matter. And so you don't have to live at that edge all the time, but every once in a while, after you have a long, boring meeting and then you connect with somebody afterwards, that's all that matters, right? Like that's all that matters. And so designing the moments that matter is really what I'm trying to do with my life. And it doesn't have to be every day, but every time I go on vacation, I try to find that new, unique way to have an experience that will never be forgotten. And we can all do that for sure.
Mm. And I do remember our conversation when we connected the first time about creating that painting in which you can add a bit more color. And can you
Yes.
say more about how can one go intentionally um, to do that?
Yeah. So I'll say this, and I think this is something that will become fact, but for now, I'll take it as a hypothesis. But that the you that you are, Alexandra, the you that I am, is we are the sum of our memories.
Hmm.
Fine, we've got some DNA and other things, but we can't control that part. So let's just say everything that we have that's controllable is the sum of our memories, and the sum of our memories is the sum of our experiences that we remember, and the sum of our experiences that we remember are they feel arbitrary to most people, but
Mm.
they're not. So the brain writes down memories in a very specific way, and it's a painting, it's not a photograph. So we paint a memory from the experiences we have in the moment, and we put it away in the hallway of our long mind, and then we pull the painting back out. Now, when we pull it out, we're repainting that painting. We are not taking the same one out of the hallway. And so, how we pull it out matters. It might have more blacks and reds, making it worse. This was a terrible time in my life. I can't believe I did that. I'm such a terrible person. I don't deserve to live. This is PTSD, and it's all of its hallmark moments, which is repeating a memory over and over and making it worse. Or we pull the memory out and we're like, I grew from that. I'm a better person now. I've done good things for people with this same issue. And that's post-traumatic growth, right? Like that's how we grow. If you can take the painting out, paint it with a brighter palette of colors with reds and yellows versus blacks and reds, that becomes the who you are. And that's how we grow. It's dangerous to pull out traumatic memories because we don't know how we're going to react to them. This is where a good therapist is really important, and you know all about this much more than me. But when we can pull out a memory and put it away better, that's the start of becoming the person we can be. And that's the nature of memory and recall.
Hmm. And I do remember that's what I don't know. I really like also the paintings behind you, but I in the color of them because I was left after our conversation with that image of adding color to the blacks and reds and the
Yes,
importance of what you just said in doing that in a relational way when it's necessary. But once we are stable enough, we can slowly start doing that for ourselves. And I
100%.
and I again, so say what did you wanna?
No, no, when you say when we're stable enough, that's a really, really important thing that nobody talks about. When we listen to people speak about resilience or growing from trauma or all that stuff, I feel like the audience for that has to already be in a place where they're ready. And that's particularly useless for everybody else. Like,
Yes.
if you are not in a place to be hearing information about self-growth and how I'm gonna, and so I do have some first base advice for people in that state. So you're not ready for post-traumatic growth. You're not ready to hear life lessons. You just do three things. Three things. And it's so easy. The body metabolizes stress in three main ways when it's overwhelmed. Physical movement. I mean, you know this, I know this, but we all know this, but we still forget it. Just have to move. You can't sit at your desk all day. You can't lie in bed all day. Get your 10,000 steps in. Just go move. Like we metabolize stress through movement. So that's base rule number one. It's the first thing we don't want to do when we feel miserable. We want to curl up in bed and do nothing. But that's not going to help you. Second is social interaction. we also know this, but we also were
Mhm.
like, I'm miserable, so I don't want to talk to anybody. No, call a friend that you really trust, like have social interaction. That's the second way we metabolize stress. And the third, the one, it's the most important actually, and it's, we're all mammals, and all mammals are wired to reduce stress through touch.
Yes, thanks for saying that.
So
Hello, coming exactly at the right moment.
I was right on cue. I did not plan that, but from petting your cat to playing with your puppy to being with your partner, we are wired for touch.
Mm,
Millennial generation has gotten to this weird mode where they don't exercise, they don't move, they don't have a lot of real friends, and they're so busy they don't have time for a pet or a girlfriend or boyfriend, and they're not utilizing the three main mechanisms we have to get yourself into a place where I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for advice. Because you're not going to take advice if you're completely in overwhelm, right? Like that counselor session's not really gonna get you anywhere until you're ready. You're like physically.
unless it's a really good counselor, I have to say.
Yes, of course. And that's the trick, right? Like you have to have a really good one. I'm sure you are. But there are various levels
Absolutely.
of capacity in that
Yes,
workforce, just like everything else.
exactly. Yes. And actually I really thank you for saying this because it's very interesting. I'm doing now cranial sacral therapy with someone and she's always telling me you're that generation that doesn't move. So I can feel it in your body. I can see exactly where it's normally that I see that this body hasn't been moved, that there's a lot of static stuff inside. I'm seeing someone else who is actually we that is called being in touch. Her she works with Alexander technique, and she's basically we were speaking about you cannot outgrow your need for touch. And I find it really funny that so many people think that being adult means not having that need anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's absolutely absurd. We are wired for touch, and that's what makes, I mean, I always tell this when I'm speaking. I always talk about like you're walking in a park, it's a beautiful sunny day, and somebody's got a box with a couple of puppies, and you go play with them. Can you be stressed in that moment? It's impossible.
Yeah.
And this is why they bring petting dogs into stressful situations, right? Like they bring dogs into the crisis after a building is burned down because that's what's going to work, right? Like this little critter who has just decided to make her home base during our talk. It works, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that was like the first part of your life or like your first life. But did you know that back then?
I
Like,
didn't I didn't know. But I was at least physically active and socially interactive being
mm-hmm.
on the team. And I used to always like I used to say like if you go to bed and you can't fall asleep, you're just not tired enough. Like if you're physically exhausted from a workout all day, there's no problem falling asleep, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like this this way that people live today where they're mentally exhausted, that does not lead to fruitful sleep, it doesn't lead to good relationships, but physical exhaustion leads to really easy sleep and honestly it helps your relationships as well. You
Yeah.
just don't get triggered by everything.
Yeah. And what was success for you at the time in that first stage of your life? If
I
someone
mean,
would have asked you right then, what would it have been different than your definition right now?
great question. So success for a 20 something athlete was winning
Mm,
at all costs. Winning, winning, winning. And I went to the Olympics and I got a silver medal, which was what we would now phrase as a one-timer first loser.
mm,
I went to one Olympics only and I was second place.
mm.
And that's the way I identified for a decade.
Oh wow, that's rough. Yeah.
But I did grow up eventually because I heard the wise words of a father, of a man, of a boy at that time. So I went on and I was invited to be the analyst for the Olympics for NBC. 10 years after I retired. And so I was back at the Olympic Games, but not competing. And I'm a one-timer first loser still. Um, but after 16 of the 17 days of the Winter Olympics, this same parent sat across from me at dinner and in about 20 seconds changed the entire trajectory of my life. And it's the only reason we're talking now. So we're
Mm,
at dinner. And he said, John, I need to talk to you. And he looked nervous. He was making me nervous. I'm like, Okay, what did I do?" So we walk away from the table, and he said, I just want you to know that we wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for you. And I said, I don't know what you mean. He said, You won't remember, but 12 years ago, after you won your silver medal, you brought it to a little reception in Bay City, Michigan. I brought my son Alex. He was 11 years old at the time. He'd never skated before. You put your medal around his neck, you sign an autograph. The next day, he joined the Bay City Speed Skating Club, and tomorrow
oh,
he's skating in the gold medal final.
I'm literally goosebumping from my head to my toes. Yeah.
And just like that, my entire life changed. I
Mm,
went from a one-timer first loser to realizing that it mattered and that
mm,
I matter. And
mm,
that memory was repainted in silvers and yellows and blues. And it is now one of my best memories, not one of my worst, because one person did that for me.
mm. And this is where I feel like we forget that healing is collective and that we
100%.
really need others to remind us of those things. And I don't know where I read it, but I read somewhere recently that um, um, there is that the person is able to continue doing their work because they know that their work is bigger than them. So they get don't get caught in the small everyday losses, but
Yes.
they feel connected to something bigger. And I guess that was lacking because it was hyper focused on only the
100%.
only the championship itself, but the context is much wider.
Once it became not me, and that goes for real work as well. Like, and I'll say this sometimes. I'll play this out with you. Just play along.
Yes, yes.
So just say yes when I ask you the question. So the question is, actually say no. So the answer is no, but just play along.
Okay.
Alexandra, do you need somebody to pat you on the back to do your best work? Say no.
No, no.
Yeah. Of course not, because you're self-driven and you're successful and you get all your work done. But let's remind you of a time where you were doing amazing work. You were writing something, you were developing something, and then somebody came along and said, "Oh my God, you're crushing this." And then your work went even farther up, which brings me back to Alexandra, do you need some positive affirmation to do your best work? Yes, you do. We all do.
Mm,
That's the way we are wired. Positive affirmation means a lot to everybody and it's useful, and we don't do enough of it.
yeah. And actually, that's like I always find this super funny because my guests always come and bring the topic I'm currently in. It's a really funny phenomenon, but actually, this is where I'm at now. I've just enrolled in my last years of the psychotherapy school, and I have an incredible tutor who I would say his best capacity is to praise you in an incredible way while still challenging you.
Yeah.
And I almost want to cry every time he says something so nice for me because the last time in that weekend I had recently, I just felt how exhausting it was to bootstrap myself in my entire life, to find that strength to say, "You're okay. This is okay. It's going to be okay. You're good." It's a lot of inner resource. And once I had it on the outside, I just realized, oh my God, this feels like I have a rocket in my back.
Yeah.
And I can literally go anywhere. And I find it, and maybe we could just compare experiences because I work uh, I worked as a scientist, but in an institute which is highly competitive and extremely well known. And there is this really funny phenomenon that this place gathers the most gifted and enthusiastic scientists, and we all end up feeling like we're not good enough because there is one person that is maybe two steps ahead or two in two small ways better than us. And I find that phenomenon extremely sad because then I see this incredible, gifted, driven, motivated people feeling like shit for decades actually. And the system perpetuating this and using it in some way, shape, or form. So I wonder if that somehow you felt a similar pattern in your athletic life.
100%. And I wish I could go back. So, similar, very similar, which, you're competing with the best athletes in the world, and there are people better than you. And, at that time, I just internalized all that. I gotta beat, I gotta win, I gotta be better. Like, and I
Mm.
said nothing to them. And if I could go back and be my 22-year-old self, I would be like, Dan Jansen, you crushed that workout. Like, you're amazing. Because he was.
Yeah.
And then, maybe say, what's the trick? Like, what are you doing that what could I learn from you? I did none of that, right? I never lifted up the best and then asked them for their advice. And if I had, they would have given it. Of course they would. That was probably, they're just feeling all of us biting at their heels all the time, right? Like, they're not feeling the fact that we actually admire them because we kept that hidden. And I think most people would love that chance to give back to people that haven't gotten as far as they have gotten yet, and that was a miss. And to ask people what's their secret, that's just an easy question. What's your
Hmm.
secret?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I mean, I think there is even research, but I think we don't need the research. But I think the Gottman couple, they did research with couples, and I think they found that it's either 9 to 1 or 7 to 1 positive to 1 negative interaction is necessary,
Fire. Yes.
required for a relationship to feel nurturing. So I find it really funny that we have all this information, but somehow we're still not implementing it. And I'm not exactly sure what needs to happen, but maybe you have some ideas.
We just need to do the math, right? Like, do the work. Like, there's a book, I'm looking at it right now. It's called Humankind. Have you heard of it?
No, no.
It's by a Dutch writer, but it's basically a re-examination of all of the negative stories we've been told from the last 500 years from various wars or what have you, and that despite what we think, most people are really good. Like,
Mm,
given any circumstance, almost everybody's going to try to do the right thing all the time. And it's only when we don't that it makes headlines. And
yeah.
that's really sad. It's really sad because the reality is we can actually count on almost everybody all the time to do the right
At least
thing.
one good thing, which is not
Yeah.
negligible.
Yes. And
Mm,
we forget that. We forget that we're wired to be socially good. We forget that we're wired to help each other. We forget that. And then we actually get programmed to not do that. And it's so dumb. Like, we
mm,
only gain by lifting others up. Like, but that's not what we were taught in athletics. That's not what we were taught in the corporate world. That's not what we were taught in real life. But the reality is, the more you lift others up, the farther you're going to go. I mean, Gandhi had no shoes, but that man ruled the country with no money, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
you get,
And I wonder, like, this can like kind of smoothly lead us into the second part of or your second life.
yeah.
Um, and I wonder, what did you see in the corporate world, speaking to Fortune 500 companies and to leaders, and what's the language that you think can get to them actually?
Oh my God, I did it so wrong. I mean, I'm fortunate that I did everything wrong all the time, so I can talk about it. Um, so I came from consulting, where you're sort of paid to know, and then I went into corporate life where I didn't know this, but you're paid to listen. Like, a leader's job more often than not is to listen. And I didn't know that. So I told everybody what to do all the time. That was what I thought I was supposed to do. And we did a 360 review after my first year in my job. And I had one of the lowest scores out of 9,000 people in a company. Literally, my entire team hated me. And I didn't even know it. That's how embarrassing that is. I asked them to rerun the numbers because I was like, that can't be right. And no, they did. They hated me. So they sent me off to training camp for aspiring leaders because they could have fired me, but they didn't. And I went through this whole week-long thing where I got feedback and we did these projects and I got psychotherapy and the end of it all honestly was, John, every time you're in a situation where you see an answer, you tell the answer. You say, this is what we should do.
Mm,
And more often than not, you're right. And nobody cares. People want to have a voice. They want to have an input into the outcomes. And so your entire work plan when you get home to your work job is to say, what should we do? And I'm like, this is never gonna work. This is never gonna work. Like these people already hate me. This is never gonna work. But I was landing in Milwaukee where I was working at the time, and my phone was blowing up because the entire network was down. It was a wireless company. And my second in command, Paul, got through to me and he's like, hey, got a big problem. And I was like, here's what should we do? And I'm like, literally, like, because I knew what to do. This is about knowing. It's about, and like, what should we do? And he's like, well, we should issue an email to everybody, letting everybody know the network's down. We should hit the leaders first, do that 15 minutes, and then do everybody else. And then I was like, and anything else? And he's like, let's let the regional vice president know first. She hates being surprised. Let's hit Kathy. We'll do the leaders. We'll do everybody else. We'll get it all done in 15 minutes. I was like, oh, yeah, that's everything I would have done. I told him nothing. So later I told him my little secret. I'm like, I'm not going to be telling you what to do anymore. I'm going to ask you what to do. And if you don't know what to do, I will tell you what to do. But otherwise, I'm going to lean on you because you know lots of stuff. And I did that for an entire year. And a year later, same 360 survey. I went from one of the worst scores in the entire company and one of the top 10 scores of the entire company. My entire work team grew to love me because I didn't tell them what to do.
mm,
I asked them, what should we do? And
mm,
I would never have believed that would have worked, but it did.
mm, mm, mm. Well, it's a I think it's also part of what we do in therapy. It's strengthening people's agency and
My favorite term, keep going.
yeah. And and I think in a way um the role of a leader is to be eventually replaced and
100%.
and or replaceable um and and uh, and in a way that um people need to feel like they're contributing. And when they have a problem, they need to be believed that they have the muscle strength to solve it. And sometimes they just need a push. And I actually, for me, I saw a really incredible image. Actually, it was of my therapist and her daughter. She was trying to climb a bench, and she was very tiny, I think maybe 1 or 2 years. And I've never seen that level of that kind of support. There is a really good gestalt therapist who says give children and people all the supports that's necessary, but only as much as it's required. So, um, so that in a way you could see that she was struggling, but her mom didn't push her only until the last step where she needed
Right.
to kind of climb off. And that's, I feel like, how we are learning throughout whole of our lives. It's just that I imagine that some of us get into that place um, of kind of saying what to do because what we sometimes struggle with is to feel powerless. And this always helps us to be in control. So I wonder.
So agency is like my favorite word. Everybody listening right now, you all have agency. Every single person listening to this, By the virtue that you have a computer, by the virtue that you have a phone, by the virtue that you have technology, means you already have more agency than probably anybody had except for royalty until the last 200 years. So we, as modern adults, have incredible agency, but we brick ourselves up in this bulwark of pretending we don't. So I'm going to tell a story. One of my favorite stories about agency. There's a place called Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Arizona, that takes drug addicted rock stars, athletes, and movie heroes. Like the rich and famous go there to get cleaned up. And
Mm-hmm.
the director is this guy named Dr. David Baker. And 25 years ago, he had a certain rock star person come in, and they're all kind of the same. They're just a complete mess, right? They're addicted to drugs and alcohol, and their whole life is out of control. And they come in there and they get cleaned up, and but he's asking him, so what's going on with you? He's like, well, I have no control over my life. Like, I'm supposed to do 13 albums in 13 years. All of them are in a certain genre that I don't even like anymore. I have to do 50 concerts a year in big arenas. That's 150 days of travel. I have no control over my life. And Dr. Baker's like, so how much money do you have? And I mean, I can't trust my accountants, but
Couple
maybe
million.
$100 million, right? Like an incredible sum of money. And Dr. Baker is like, so you're telling me you have no agency? And this is a metaphor for all of us. Well, no, I have the record. He's like, what if you walk away? What happens if you walk away from all of it? What happens if you don't do the record deals? What happens if you don't do the concerts? What happens if you write your own music? He's like, I'll lose hundreds of millions of dollars and fans. And he's like, and what's important to you? Why are you here? Why are you all messed up on drugs and alcohol and here miserable when you have $100 million to make? So it took him a couple weeks to unwind, but he eventually got him to a place of like, no, I have agency. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. So he quit the record deals. He quit the concerts. He quit everything. He quit all of it. He wrote the music he wanted to write. He lived the life he wanted to live. I ended up meeting him about 10 years later. His name is James Taylor. He's a pop folk guy. We went rollerblading in Martha's Vineyard every day for 5 days. He was the happiest human being I've ever met. He drove a Yugo, literally the world's worst car intentionally. He wore the same pants every day. He had more money than anybody needed, and he wrote his own music. He did his own concerts, he had his own life. He was so happy. This man could not stop laughing. He told us dirty limericks every day. He took control of his life. We all have agency. There's some people that don't. You're a working mother of 7 kids in Honduras, like maybe not. The rest of us, we have agency. We can choose not to do this relationship. We can choose not to do this job. We can choose not to live where we live. Like there's so many choices we can make that make our lives better. And just like James Taylor did, we probably should.
And it's just funny. I'm from the place where Hugo was born.
No kidding. Yeah, right, right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, but I think that's a really important thing because what we are talking is that often what trauma does to us, it's hides perspective. It narrows
100%.
the view. It narrows the
That's
view.
so smart. Yes.
And so basically, when we talk about agency, what we need is some support to widen the view.
See perspective, widen perspective, 100%.
Exactly. And have some new insight. So I wonder who are people or what, I mean, the 360s is a good way of getting perspective, but what do you think has shifted your perspectives um during any season of your life?
No, for me, it's really easy. All of us have some native talents, and we're wired to do those things. And if we're not doing them, then yeah, our perspective narrows and we just get halfway good at something that we don't love.
Mm,
But when you have this option to like say, wait, if you could do anything, it's such a great question. Like, if you could do anything, what would you do?
mm,
Why aren't you doing that? Somebody asked me that 15 years ago, and I was working the corporate life, right? Working for the man, putting my hours. And I was like, well, if I could do anything, I would somehow travel the world, have adventures, and get paid to speak and write about them. And now that's what I do. But I didn't think it was possible at the time, but at least I aired it, you know? And so we all have this capacity to do things that we're really good at. And when we do the things we're really good at, the whole world galvanizes towards us. Like everybody is interested in that person.
Mm,
Nobody cares about the person that's half-assing their way through mediocrity. Nobody cares. But everybody is very interested in someone that's doing what they do their very best work at, especially when they just don't care. Because when, you're doing what you really love, you kind of don't really care what other people think. And there's a great quote from a German cyclist, which I love, which I think you'll appreciate, which is self-belief beyond all reason.
mm, mm, yeah.
When you just find that thing and you're just gonna do it, you don't care. Doesn't
Mm,
matter. Doesn't matter what people think anymore. Because I love
mm,
it. I'm gonna do it.
yeah.
Well, that's when people start to care. It's super weird, but they start to care when you don't care anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I am I'm sitting with that and I'm wondering um I kind of had that self-belief beyond reason when it came to science, but then reality really course corrected me quite harshly. And I wonder whether that needs to be um I think it takes what I in my experience is it takes quite a lot of time to admit to yourself what that thing that you really love might be
Mhm.
that's not tainted by what you have been told you should be.
100%.
And I think
Yes.
that's the hard part of the work, I would say. I don't know how what helps you to clear up those voices.
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with the flow state.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in the flow state, which is when you're doing your very best work, when you're being your most authentic self, when the world disappears, yourself disappears, honestly, you're not in yourself. Time does wonky things. It stops, it speeds up, it goes away. When you're in the flow state, you know this is you. Like that's your true self. You can't
Mm,
be in the flow state being somebody else. And so when you can do more of that, um, then the perspective of others stops mattering as much. And
mm,
it does mean more often than not, and this is the hard part for people, is they have to change their location, their environment. Like if your environment doesn't support you being you, then that's not your environment.
mm,
It's so hard for people because they grew up with that or that's, what they think is right and it feels right. But until you're surrounded by the people and sights and sounds that make you feel full, only then can you give back to the people that weren't supporting you in the first place. Like, and then you can, like, and you don't care. You're like,
mm,
you can be the best person to all those people that were naysayers because you don't care anymore because you've been successful in this new thing that you needed to do your whole life. And
mm,
if people find that and get lucky enough to find that, they're the biggest givers in the world because they know they don't have anything to keep. It's giveaway all the time. And I
mm,
see that with what you're doing. Like you're not doing this for money. You're not doing this to be famous. You're doing this because you care about people's thought patterns, and that's a beautiful thing.
mm. Yeah, and that's for me. It's truly been this podcast in a way that I you said the word curiosity, and it's so important for me to have a plentitude of languages and experiences to touch the human condition. And it's very nurturing for me, and then I hope that in some way it will be nurturing for the people who listen to it. So thanks for recognizing that.
I see it coming right through you all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And uh, so we talked about the corporate career.
Yeah.
And what was the next shift? What was the next push? What was the inner kick that pulled you over to the next step?
So I mean, we've talked about Maslow's hierarchy, with safety and security and love and belonging and all these things that are really important. And you get to fourth t tier is esteem of others, and then the fifth, and he added a sixth one later, but let's just go with the five pyramid, is self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people in a career job like I was do what I did. They work hard, they get past paying the bills, right? They get a relationship, there's people that love them, and then they build the esteem of their peers. And then they're like, wait a minute, like they're windmilling on this little tiny platform at the top, going, wait, this is it? This doesn't feel like me. This isn't where I wanted to go. Sure, it's a lot of money, but I'm not even me.
Mm.
So the last step for most people, myself included, is to tumble back all the way down. Myself, I quit my job. I also got divorced at the same time, so I literally was couch surfing with friends, wondering if I'm ever going to make money again. But I decided to start a speaking business because that's the one thing that I felt like I was really, fully lit up, that I was finally, the person I could be. And so I was actualized speaking, so I decided to do that. I wasn't sure if I was going to pay the bills, wasn't sure if it was going to work, but self-belief beyond all reason, I just did it. And I started booking speaking gigs, and that was 10 years ago. And now I can't tell you the magnitudes of happiness and fulfillment I feel now compared to where I was in the corporate world. They're not even the same place. Like
Mm.
it's 1000x. And
Mm.
now I get to connect with people that matter, that make meaning for others and help them make meaning for others. And I hear their stories afterwards, and it's so incredibly rewarding to do what I do now. And I was 47 years old at the time. Like I found my calling at 47. So people in your audience are like, "Wait, I'm too old. I'm 35." No, no, no. Like it can happen at any time, right? Like, and
Mm.
so the
And
final
there might be a calling for different stages of one's life.
100%, yeah, 100%, yes. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, obviously my calling was an athlete. I wasn't going to stand on stages and speak when I was 25. Nobody wants to hear a 25-year-old talk anyway. Yes, so yes,
And
different
maybe we
stages.
should actually. I think that's also something that I feel we have gotten wrong as society, where we don't allow our younger generations to teach us.
Right,
And I
right.
think
Fair.
I think sometimes young people really have what to say if we are willing to listen. But even the belief you've just said out loud, I believe many people have because we've grown up with that idea. Um, you need to kind of, I don't know, I'm having this Serbian saying, but um, you need to kind of sharpen your tools before you have the right to even say something.
Right, right, right.
Um,
No, you are right to call me out on that because there are lots of things that the intuition of a younger individual in our society has to teach us. And
mm,
it may not be speaking from the, decades of experience, but that's okay
but
because
they
they
have
might
the
have an insight.
freshness that
100%.
I read somewhere that it's in points of view, but maybe I won't remember the quote, but something along the lines that um, the expert has only one or two solutions, but the new person or however you want to call it has a field of possibilities. And
100%.
and I think that's sometimes necessary for us to be more creative in our solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it all the time. People will say, and this is the worst thing ever uttered in any boardroom in the country, in the world right now, which is, that won't work. We tried that before.
Ah, yes, yeah.
And only the younger people are going to be like, wait a minute, And so my answer to that always is, when was that? And the answer is always like 1995. Like, that's 28 years, like, that's 30 years ago. Like, maybe the world has changed. But the older experts in the room can't get themselves past that thought. And that's where we really need to lean into the perspectives of people that are the widened perspectives of people that aren't being judged all the time. That's such a
Mhm.
great metaphor.
And actually, I wanted to ask and expand on what you've said around I'm blanked now, so just give me a second. Um, when you were speaking about um, I'm blanked. So we'll stop here and
Okay.
then we go. I don't remember now what I want to say. I had a thought and normally comes after 30 seconds, so I'll probably remember it. But what I wanted to ask is, what do you feel that in those speaking gigs, and you said that you've met a lot of leaders and people who in their boardrooms. What do you feel are some myths around leadership that you would want people to break in this day and age?
I mean, the biggest one for me, and this is, my personal passion is that there's a lot of time poverty in the wealthiest individuals in this world.
Mm,
They're programmed from youth to work, 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 trade their time for money, and they're really good at it. And then when it comes for trading their money for time, they have no idea how to do it. And then they do the worst thing in the world when it comes to financial investing. They intuitively believe that they can invest their time into low risk, short-term investments and have high returns. That's never going to work in the world of financial investing, right? Like cash and savings is never going to give you high returns. And so they invest themselves into the comfort of the same routine, the nice house, the same pool, the same place on vacation, great food, all of the luxuries of life. And none of those have a higher risk, longer term time element, and they're missing out on life. And so
mm,
my advice to them is don't do that. Like you're gonna have to like take a low class bus across Mexico to experience what life is actually like. You're gonna have to get dumped off in the wrong port in Malaysia before you're gonna really feel the way you used to feel about the excitement of life. Until you have some risk uncertainty in your travels and your adventures in your life, you're not gonna have it. So it's six things. It's risk and uncertainty, uniqueness, emotional intensity, physical intensity, beauty, flow state. You get all six of those, you're going to have a moment that you'll never forget for the rest of your lives. But these people design themselves out of that. They literally don't want anything that's not the same, and it's a complete miss on life.
hmm And I know from some people, I found it so funny. I had an acquaintance who is wealthy, and she came to visit me, and she was like, I mean, and she constantly speaks about being in this really wealthy hotels and that she pays for rooms, I don't know how much, but then she was like, I changed this room like 4 times during because in this one I didn't like the shower, and in the other one I didn't like the pool, and then I was sitting there and I found it so funny that she has invested so much of her time to get that money to be able to pay that room. And when she does have that room, she's not able to experience it because
Right.
there is this whole thing of being tuned and attuned to all the things that are out of order while not being able to see all the things there are there.
Right. I mean, you and I would go into that and be like, "Thank you. This is
Yeah,
the best place I've ever been." Right? Like, yeah,
yeah.
they miss out on all of the beauty of the uniqueness of the world, and it's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I did remember what I wanted to ask.
yeah.
When it was the moment where when you were speaking on couch surfing and taking that step back from your life or that unraveling kind of. And I think for building a life of our own that's authentic, does sometimes require creating that space we're sometimes invited into that space unwillingly, and sometimes we create it, but it does require that strength to be in that space of unraveling so that the next rebuild is something more authentic to that stage or to who you were, but you didn't allow yourself to be. So I'm just wondering what supported you to do that, or what pushed you to do that, whichever feels like it was more present.
No, great question. I think I was very lucky in that I had great parents. My parents always believed in me. Um, And so when I was competing, they weren't like just, go win, you have to win. Like they were like, do the best you can. We love you anyway. They were
Mm.
always there. Um, to the point where I don't know if you know the story, but I was competing on the Olympic team and their program wasn't working for me. I was getting slower and I was doing worse with training with the very best people in the world. So I quit the team, which nobody does. Like you don't quit the Olympic team. That's your only option, right? But I trained on my own for a couple of years and I came back to the next major event in my sport so much faster, better than I had ever been by training on my own. Actually came back and I set the national record by 5.5 seconds in my first race. I set a world record. I set every single US record back to back by leaving the sport, but my parents supported me there. So when I sort of finished with sports, I always had this sort of support mechanism of two people that knew me that believed that I could kind of do anything, which is nonsense, of course, because there's 5 bazillion things I can't do. Um, but when I went into consulting and then I went into business, and then when I finally quit my job, they were like, "Yeah, that's probably the right thing." They were always just so they flew in for my first TED Talk. I was so nervous, and I almost didn't give it. So I can never forget this. I was sitting in the living room with my dad and my mom. I'm like, I can't do it. I'm not ready. I can't do it. I'm not going. I'm not going tomorrow. And my dad's like, you'll figure it out. You always do. So I
Mm.
went in the car in the garage and I practiced it like 4 more times and I finally nailed it. And I was like, okay, I got it. 2 in the morning, and the next morning I gave the talk and it worked out great. And this became my new career. But I was fortunate to have two people in my corner that were always supportive, and that gave me the capacity, I think, to take the kinds of risks that a lot of people won't do. And you've pointed it out, right? When you're in a traumatic situation, all you see is that trauma. You don't have perspective.
Mm.
And
Mm.
being able to see your way out of a situation, and the quote that I can't attribute, but is when life seems to give you no choices, all that's left is the hard ones.
Oh wow, that's great. Oh my God, that's yeah, I know that's so viscerally. Yeah.
Because you're gonna have to do the hard thing. You're gonna have to quit the relationship. You're gonna have to leave the job. You're gonna have to move out of town. You're gonna have to not talk to those people. You're gonna have to whatever that hard, stupid, hard thing is, you're gonna have to do it. Doesn't
Mm.
mean you don't have options. It just means the hard ones are what's left.
Mm. Mm. I love that. I love that. That's incredible. And something interesting came to me because you said in the beginning that you are hopefully fearless. But now what I'm seeing or what I'm hearing is that it doesn't mean you're fearless. It means you allow yourself the fear and still go with it.
Yeah,
But there is
definitely.
enough support for that fear to be voiced and to be expressed and then to be metabolized into something meaningful.
Well said. Yes. No, I definitely experience fear, but I've been able to lean into some pretty hard choices in my life and make what turned out to be the wise choices, like quitting the corporate life. Like I had a
Mm.
huge golden parachute. I walked away from millions of dollars of stocks,
Mm.
but then I had my whole life to do whatever I want, right? I left sports to do God knows what, went into consulting, but in hindsight, these were really great choices for the opportunities that life would provide, which are not, I mean, this, like money's fine. It's just not that important.
Yeah, and that's the thought. That's an additional thought I had as you were speaking. Yes, I think that there's this viral video of Jim Carrey saying, "I wish everyone would get money, fame, and something else, and see that that's not the solution to their
Right,
depression."
right, right.
And I don't wanna sound, because I know what existential threats are. And I don't wanna, we discussed this, I don't wanna minimize people who are going through existential threats. So I think there is a threshold where money does solve your psychological problems.
100%.
Um, but I think, and this is, I think, what we discussed is um, you can enter into the biggest castle, the most beautifully decorated place on earth with a pool, but if your nervous system is not regulated, you won't be able to take that in. And I think
100%.
that's my passion, where my passion comes from working with leaders, and overachievers is where there is a point where more is just not going to cut it because you don't know how to receive.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that therapy, well, I'm obviously biased. I'm probably it's possible to do this in different ways. But what works for me and what I think really works well with a good therapist is that that's how we increase our capacity to receive care, to receive beauty in a way that we don't need to accumulate it and hold on to it.
That's
And
well said. Well said. I'm working with, so you would appreciate this, and this may be a place we would point your podcast. I started working with the wealthy families of the original founders of successful businesses, and their next generations are kind of I don't want to say a mess, but they didn't build it. They have all the financial resources of it, and per your point, like all they see is the problems, not the like dad or granddad or whatever he would have been like, oh my God, look at this amazing place that we can afford
yes.
now. Like, and they're like, this is my 40,000th time to an amazing place, and all I see is what's wrong with it. Like, it's a really weird mentality that emerges when you've been given everything and you didn't necessarily earn
Earn
it.
it.
It's not to say that you don't deserve a place on this planet. Of course you do, but it's a weird place when you didn't earn it. And they
Mm.
have a really hard time appreciating what's right in front of them.
Mm. Yeah, there is I really like Siddhartha by by Hesse, and I think that there is something about experiencing contrast,
Mhm.
and having that. For me it was really funny because Serbia is, it's a weird country to grow up in, because it has quite a big span. Um, but I didn't I always appreciated what I had because I always was like, where is the health coming from? Because we were a socialist country, so at the time, most of our we just had free health
Right.
insurance, and I was like, but this, like, these people are working for some, like, they're giving their time costs. Like, I always had that thing, like, who is doing the work? Like, where's this energy coming from? It's not free. This energy cannot be free.
Right.
Um, and like, only now I'm realizing what politics means and how you distribute resources, and I always felt that that was not something I'm getting for granted. Like, I've really felt grateful, but I think that it's in human nature to take things that they have never lost for granted. To
100%.
just take those things that are always there, as in, like, this is I assume this. It's and it's and I for me it's really, I really like that I had that, well, life experience and like world experience to see some starking differences. And then what was really for me surprising is when I learned that some of my friends from another countries, they used buckets to have a shower because they were saving waters in some way. So like 3 buckets was measure of how much water you can use to have a shower, and how much we take water for granted, hot water
Right.
for granted,
Right.
internet for granted. And especially living through a war and knowing that there are electricity cuts and
Right.
knowing how that looks like, I find it so funny when people take electricity for granted as that's a given and it always exists and it always existed. So I think that there is something to be said about contrast, and that doesn't mean that, like, you should take away the safety rug out of someone's experience, but I think the exposure to difference, intentional exposure to difference, I think is quite important. There is also a movie, but I think it's called something like 10 Christmas lists or something, where a father or a grandfather is leading he's a wealthy owner of a company and leading his grandchild through 10 steps to really experience life and help him to understand what it means um, to be living in that, or you can say privilege or wealth, or what to understand what's assuming. So maybe I can ask you, what do you think you have been assuming and now you're not taking for granted anymore?
Oh darn, I don't know. I mean, I'll answer that in a second, but
Hmm.
it is notable that all over, the social media world these days, you'll never hear the following. I'm so glad mom and dad had so many resources and gave me everything when I grew up.
Mm,
Like you won't hear that. Like it's always the opposite. Like I didn't have this, mom didn't have that, dad didn't have that. Like, and so I've become who I am because of the scarcity of resources. Like
yeah.
nobody's nobody's saying the opposite, right? So
And
what am I
I
thinking?
have to say, I must say, when I see transformation stories, I almost want to vomit. And I've never said this out loud, but I'm like, I really don't think we need to use this as an example. Sometimes I feel like people need that contrast too much to show that like you can change, like you can come from this to this.
Right,
And I
right.
and I really think that we need models where it's much more gradual, where it's I don't sell this transformation, but I sell loving the person I am that I didn't need to transform.
I 100% agree with you. Those stories just aren't as compelling for whatever reason, but we
Well,
need
they're
those.
not. We need, yeah, yeah.
What am I taking for granted right now?
Or
That's a good question.
maybe you have been taking for granted along different stages of your life. That doesn't have to be right now.
I would say that I am super blessed with time as
Mm,
a resource. In that, I speak for an hour. I have to show up and have to do AV check, but it's my time investments for what I do now are relatively minimal. And then I get, I was just in Boston for the last 3 days and I went to Salem and I walked around the city for hours. Like I get to do kind of whatever I want to do most of the time, which is amazing.
mm,
Um, but I feel like I'm not taking that for granted because every time I get to do it, it's like all I did yesterday was walk around Boston for 9 hours. Like I did not take that for granted. I
hmm.
understand that if I was in a regular job, I'd have been at a desk from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. And I am so grateful to just get to do not that. But if I had never done that, I don't know if I'd have been as grateful about it because
Yeah.
I did the grind for, 20 years. So I don't know. I think that being grateful for free time is one thing we really, really need to focus on because it's our most valuable resource and we don't get it back. We can't save it. We can't store it up. It's a slipping slope of dollar figures running out of our bank every day, and if we don't take advantage of it, well, then we've just lost that day.
Mm. And what does then being alive in the context of time mean for you? What is being alive? What does being alive for you mean? What's the liveliness in life for you?
So the name of my business is The Art of Really Living,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes from two different sources. The first is a book, The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, where the two main characters are discussing things, and the one says to the other, "Well, I can't stand that life is speeding by and I'm not really living it."
Mm.
And his friend says, "Well, no one lives all the way up except for bullfighters." So that's the first quote, which is like living on the edge, like literally living on the edge. And the other is from the movie Braveheart, where the character William Wallace says, "Every man lives, uh, every man dies, but not every man really lives." With the notion that how do I live all the way up? How do I live into full aliveness? How do I take advantage of all of these minutes and seconds and months that I've been given? And that's by design. There are ways to design our lives to create moments that are stored, recalled in memory, and those are the ones that we should be spending our time doing. And so that's what I'm trying to do all the time whenever I can.
Mm. And actually, I like the brave heart. I like the sentence, your heart is brave, you just need to have the courage to follow it.
Follow it.
That's one of
100%.
that's one of my favorite quotes from that movie. But and I don't know, can you tell me what is one of those one moment where you haven't done it intentionally, but you felt fully alive? And one moment where you maybe designed, or moments where you design your self experiences, where you put yourself into feeling alive.
Well, so I was encouraged to join the Olympic team, but I chose not to. And so I was traveling through Europe by myself, not with the team. And because I didn't have money, I hitchhiked. So I was hitchhiking from Amsterdam to Munich, and I got about halfway there, and a truck dumped me off in the middle of nowhere, like he was going to France. So it wasn't his intent, but I was 2 in the morning, and it was pouring rain. It was 30 degrees, so 2 degrees Celsius, freezing rain. I'm immediately like frozen solid. I'm going to die. 100%. I'm going to die. I ran down the road for an hour, 2 hours, nothing. And then I went into the fields that were surrounding it, and I found that was just hay. And so I built a haystack about 5 feet high and 8 feet long and 5 feet wide. And then I stripped naked in this freezing rain, and I put on my only dry clothing, which was my speed skating skin suits. And then I burrowed underneath the middle, and I turned sideways, and I put this tube that I had that my blades came in. I breathed through the tube. I was warm. I was safe. I was dry. I slept the whole night, no problem. So I buried myself in a haystack in freezing rain in Germany, survived the night, got up the next day. I'm still wearing the skin suits, the spandex. And I'm like, well, let's see how that goes with hitchhiking. So I walk out there. Meanwhile, this noise had suddenly stopped, which I thought was the highway. It was this giant tractor about to mow me over. So he sees me come through the top of this weird nest. I'm wearing bright silver, pink, and purple. So he thinks I'm an alien. Like he has no idea what's going on. Like his mouth is open, and then he never moved. And so I walked down the street and I stuck my thumb out, and three cars stopped because I had choices, because everybody wanted to pick up the weird guy in the bright silver, pink, and purple skin suit. And so I went to the rink and I was able to live the rest of my life. So that was the first one. I didn't choose that one, but it was a great.
What was the alive thing about in that for you? What made you, what's
Just
the
waking up feeling that I am literally still alive after I was sure I was gonna die.
mm, mm,
I was
mm,
sure. I was sitting there on the edge of that road at 3 in the morning, freezing and knowing I wasn't going to make it. And I
mm,
didn't care. Like that was the scariest part was I didn't care. Um, but I'll tell you at a moment I designed not too long ago. I'm dating and my girlfriend, I wanted to create an experience for her. And so I didn't know how, and I thought to myself, well, I know some people, so there's a comedy slash um, magic act here in Vegas called Penn and Teller, and I knew the wife of one of the members. So I was like, "Can you make me look good? I already bought tickets. Like, I'm not asking for a handout. Can you just somehow make me look cool?" So we get there early, and she's like, "Yeah, just be there when the show starts and have your phone on." So we sit down. We're the first ones there, and my phone pings, and it's Teller. It's one of the two guys. And he's like, "Hello, Mariana. I understand you're coming to my show tonight. You're going to be right into the front row. This show's for everybody, of course, but tonight it's for one person only. It's for you, Mariana." So then Teller walks out, he greets her, and then halfway through the show, he pulls her up for a magic act. And so she's on stage, and she'd never been to a show before. And so, yeah, I designed that moment. I paid for it. I designed, well, I didn't really pay for it, but you can design these moments for the people you love. You can create memorable scenarios that they'll never forget. And it's our job.
mm. Well, it also sounds like what you call special is making someone feel special, or supporting
Oh,
someone feeling special.
Of course, yes.
Mm, mm. And today, actually, for some reason, yesterday, I saw in my um, in my porch, which is like a closed terrace, and I saw a window with, and I saw the blue sky. And today I was writing a poem which was called "A Piece of Blue Sky," and I thought it was somehow poetic in a sense that everything around it felt so close, but just that small piece felt so free. Um, and I wonder sometimes whether we search for these peak experiences and we are told we need to have a peak experience, where sometimes just having that piece of blue sky is all we need. And I wonder what's your piece of blue sky? What's your feeling where you feel like, oh, I might just have everything I need and it doesn't need to be extreme.
No, you're 100% right. Like, I think it is important to design the occasional peak experience,
Yes.
because we can, and but being aware that right here, right now is amazing is a piece of presence that I think a lot of people forget. And Phil Zimbardo from Stanford would put it this way, like most high achievers have a very future orientation. They're always living in the future. They're not even in the present, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a myth. And there's also people that live in the past, and so he has the ZTPI, which is it's a assessment of where you spend your time, future,
Mm-hmm.
present, past. Um, and so being present oriented is the place we get pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we need to plan for the future. Of course, that's important. Of course, we need to make some of these moments, a couple times a year. That's all. It's fine. But if you're not present for them, you're missing it. And
Yeah.
the problem with people with certain jobs where the entire job is future oriented, most jobs are like that, I think. Mine's not, but, and yours probably isn't. But, if you're in a corporate job, it's all about next quarter, next year, 2 year, 10 year, 5 year, like it's the whole thing is future. And so you're spending all of your time in the future, and then you're not actually present for the blue sky in the corner of the window, and then you're missing life.
Mm-hmm.
Where life is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have a little cat who's curled up her hair right now, and I adore her, and she brings me present all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
so do my relationships, but um, people lose that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's someone I interviewed because in Gestalt therapy is the whole thing is about the here and now. But someone
Mhm.
I interviewed said an important thing. He said we forget that the here and now always contains part history, part present, part future. And
Mhm.
that's there's nothing wrong with that. It's just having awareness of, I'm sitting with my cat, but like this image is coming and this thought is coming. And that for me is presence. And that presence for me is inclusion, not rejection
Of
of
course.
everything that is.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think it's Michael Pollan who said that the human existence can be boiled down to something really unique, which is we are the only animal on the planet that spends part of our time in the future, part of it in the present, and part of it in memory, and the dance between those three is what makes us alive.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're always doing it, right? But having the right balance, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah.
And that's hard for people with trauma.
Yes, yes, and I would be as bold as saying that a lot of overachievers, for a lot of overachievers, the overachieving is a trauma symptom.
100%. I
Mm,
mean, what is it, 90%, 95% of US presidents lost their dad before they were age 10?
mm,
I mean, there's something there. Like they're making up for something, right? Like
mm,
most CEOs in the US are ex-military, mostly Marines. Again, right? Trauma
mm,
response to extremely
mm,
dangerous situations. And it can be a good thing if you're achieving to overcome some of those traumas, but if you're not dealing with them, then I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you making the people
Well,
around you better?
yeah, but I think there's a fine line without that where one needs to not sabotage ambition and put it in a box. I think ambition is important and having a drive and curiosity about something is really important. But I think the problem is that when all of that is done without awareness of the place we're doing that from, which is why being and leading is a conversation about how can I be conscious of the way I am leading. And I think that's what you've mentioned in your training, that you've gained some awareness of, oh, well, why, how am I contributing to this problem? And I think another person I interviewed, she said, when people go higher in the hierarchy, the air gets thinner. And that means that they don't get enough support, oxygen, and nutrition to to really nurture themselves. And we forget that they are the same humans with the same needs. Um, and they forget, and sometimes they never knew because those needs were never allowed to them. So
Yeah.
I think I think that's something. I don't know what's your way of now accessing them and being gentle but still challenging them on saying, look, take a moment and really assess what's important to you. Why are you doing this? Do you know how are you doing this? Are you aware how are you impacting people around you? Do
I mean,
you
that's
have
what
any support? Sorry.
yeah, no, I do. I actually do. I have an incredible network of friends that I reach out to. Um, my girlfriend jokes it's like you have 50 best friends. I'm like, yeah, I do. Um, but I think you're right. Like some of these CEOs and some of these, they think of themselves as lone wolves or like, I did this. And, maybe they did, but honestly, until you just said that, it never occurred to me that some of these super successful people might actually want some. No, you're right. All right, I got an example.
Mm-hmm.
I have a perfect example. So I don't know if you know who Peter Thiel is.
I I wouldn't I don't want to guess. It sounds familiar, but I wouldn't know to
He
say.
was the first investor in Facebook. He founded PayPal. He's one of the, with Zuckerberg, and he's one of the top 10 most wealthy people in the United States. And we went to college together.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's like dabbling in politics, and I don't agree with his politics, but that's neither here nor there. Um, he's just the guy I knew in college. So
Mm,
I went and had lunch with him a couple summers ago, and I didn't treat him like Peter Thiel, the billionaire. I just treated him like the guy I knew in college. And it was immediately obvious that he loved that.
mm,
Like we just had a real conversation about normal stuff,
yes.
uh, to the point he was highly emotional more than once during the conversation. Because everybody else is literally like they are like clawing at him for his
Yeah.
billions, or you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, and I didn't do any of that because I don't even honestly I don't even know anything about that stuff, so I couldn't even have that conversation. So I had just a normal conversation with him. But per
Mm-hmm.
your point, I don't know that these people get many normal conversations.
Conversations. And that's very interesting because I saw that I really I enjoyed a lot Michelle Obama's book because it really gave me a perspective of the humanity of that experience, because we all see the success side of success, but we don't see what's been taken away by that exposure, by that's not visible for us because that position corners you in a certain way of life and that sometimes is not of your choosing. And it was very interesting for me to read that to because I think the more we know that, the more we can empathize and don't see people who have that success as someone um, who has it all because it's really hard to there are always two edges of the sword. And actually it's really interesting. I was on a conference which is even a therapy conference, so you would expect that therapists have this awareness, and then some of the therapy superstars, they were stopped to the street and like everyone wants to take a picture of them, and then you speak to people and I started to realize that they are objectified in some way. Um, and a part of that objectification, then they make it somehow triggers a sort of hardening in a person.
Sure.
Um, and then a lot of the things stop being relational. And if the person is not aware of that, is not aware that there is a realm of intimacy where I can be who I am, where I can unravel, where I can say the wrong thing and not have to explain myself to masses, where I can just be, yeah, just a
Mhm.
fallible human being, not a persona. And if people forget that, I think that's deadly. And I think it
Yeah.
can be deadly.
Yeah. I would never want to be that famous. Never.
Mm,
Where everything you say is scrutinized, like every word, like, oof, no, thank you. It's
mm.
not worth it.
Yeah, and I think with awareness, and I think that's the thing. I think it's with awareness. Is I think many people go into that with the hope that they will be finally seen, accepted
Right.
for who they are, and then they realize that actually no, like where that happens is in 5 or 10 really close relationships for most of us, and everything else is kind of transactional. But if all your relationships somehow end up being transactional, there is no source where you can drink from and kind of nurture yourself. So that's why there is also for me a passion to work with leaders and overachievers, because I think we take them out of the equation and feel like, oh yeah, they don't need help. They're just like they're overachievers, like they can do these things already.
Right.
Um, but I think I have a lot of compassion for that position. And I also really believe that if one is able to touch them in such a way where the way you said you touched Peter, that it actually ripples down in how they do their work. And I think that's a really important to recognize our shared humanity.
No, you're so right. I will say this one thing that I was interviewing for a friend of mine's book, and most athletes go through a decade of depression, at least a decade.
Hmm.
You're at the highest levels of something, and then you're just not, right?
Yes.
There's no podium. There's no podium in business. Nobody's applauding you for making quarterly numbers by and large. And he was like, you made the transition relatively well. What was your secret? And I didn't know it until then, till this moment. I was like, oh, I asked for help.
Mm,
I asked for a lot of help. I asked so many people for help. I mean, there's literally dozens of people that helped me transition from sports to business. And
mm,
then there were dozens of people that helped me transition from business into entrepreneurship. Like, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. And nobody should be, but it feels like most people are afraid to. And it's like the
mm.
best gift you can give. Like the best gift you can give some people is ask them for advice.
Yes. Yes.
They love it.
Yeah.
They love it. They love being thought of as an expert in some area. It's not a cost to them, it's a build up for them. But I think we forget that a lot of the times. And we feel like, oh, I don't want to bend their time. I don't want to take, I don't, I can't. And it's just like, no, help me figure this out, please.
Mm, mm. And I wonder, is there anything, I feel like we're slowly rounding, but I feel I want to know if there is anything I haven't asked or any part of you that you feel like, you really want to share, but no one has ever asked you about, or no one has recognized the importance of that for you. And here's your chance.
Oh, okay. I do love the notion of agency and that everybody has agency and that we forget it, or we let our trauma blind us to it, or we let our relationships blind us to it, or our circumstances, or where we grew up, or who we're living with, or what we're doing. And whenever we're stuck, I think it's right that if there's no choices left, it just means there's only hard choices left. But
Mm,
there are choices. And we absent a few people, there are people that are victims in this world, but not that many. Um, if anybody's watching this, they are not victims. They have a computer, they have a phone, they have access to the internet. Like you have agency, you can make choices, and
Hmm.
sometimes you make the hard ones to get you to self-actualization. And you're doing this. I mean, you chose to do this podcast. You didn't know if it was going to work.
Mm.
Right? I didn't know if speaking was going to work. I have no clue. I was going to do it anyway.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And I kind of also want to add there, be gentle with your suffering. Even when don't use this as you have agency and now you have to do something because you're a horrible human being who is not doing
Right, right,
anything.
right, right.
I think it's really important to hold both. I
Yes.
might be in a hard place and I have agency and I am compassionate with my suffering. And I think it's that balance that's so important.
You need to have grace for yourself too.
That's it. Agency and grace. I love that.
That's a great two-word combo.
Yeah.
Uh, Grace until grace runs out. At some point, you probably have to make a choice. But it
Hmm.
doesn't mean it's today. It doesn't mean you have to do everything all the time. Like,
Hmm. But grace
100%.
will allow you to make it in the time when it's right and when you're
Right.
most resourced.
Well said. Well said.
Mm.
That's a great conclusion to this thought process. Feeling all.
That's why I love this job, actually. That's my little niche of brilliance.
I love it.
Yeah. So is there maybe anything that you want to ask me? Or anything that
Well, where do you go with this? Like, what's next for you?
with a podcast or with whatever?
Well, both. Like, what is this leading to? What's the, if you know, I mean, what's the
Yeah.
apogee going with it?
Well, what my hope for the podcast is my hope with the podcast is to give people hope.
Yeah.
And to I think you're very right. I started this podcast because I know that sometimes we are surrounded with um, I don't want to use the word bad leaders, but with leaders that are unaware, that are maybe really hard on us. And I wanted to bring people who will give some hope that there are places where there is a great culture being created. There are places where there are leaders who are thoughtful, who are self-aware, and who want to really create something good in this world. So I think that's my hope for the podcast is to reach people who may be in that place of I need to make the hard choice,
Hmm.
to realize that it's maybe not as hard as they think if they see that there are really nice places out there for waiting for them and to recognize their talents and what they have to offer. So I think that's my hope for the podcast. And for me, as I made the transition into the therapy career, I do hope that I can reach the people I can help, because I do feel this frustration, that a sort of I know I have much more capacity than it's visible, and that I want to speak about because I don't think I'm the important person here. Um, I really think it's the person I'm working with and their story that matters. And I don't want to kind of go around and showcase, look, all the things I can do. But I do want for people to know that I can be there in a really good way. So I'm really struggling to find that balance, of showing myself just enough for people to know and trust that I can be there for them in the right way, and not showing in a way that will make them feel like I'm an all-knowing, infallible human. And that's the place I'm kind of wrestling with, because I want to in one way be seen as fallible but expert and grounded. And that's a hard, um, I feel it as a hard place to be in, because sometimes when one is too vulnerable, people would be like, "Oh yeah, but I'm not sure if she really can help me and support me. Is she really that sturdy?" Um,
Right.
And then on the other hand, if there is too much sturdiness, there's maybe not recognition of like, oh, but she's like this gentle, fallible human that can actually be imperfect and show me how to lead that with that imperfection. So I think that's the thing for me is really finding that balance so that the right people can hear me and that they can really feel that I can support them and reach out for help, as you said, when they need it. And I really I'm recently I've been having some incredible sessions with my clients, and every time I leave a session, I feel this is so right. This is so right. And it's such a privilege to be witnessing these changes in people's lives. Um, and I really hope that I can do that for more people. So that's what feels that's next.
I think you're doing it just right.
Thank you so much. So is there anything else that you feel, I mean, that you still want to ask or say or end
I'm
with?
good. How about you?
I feel that it's somehow complete. I feel agency and grace is a really good ending.
It's a really good ending.
And is there something that you want to leave our listeners with?
I mean, it's the same thing I will always say, which people forget, but, and you know it, but that time and money are fungible and we trade our time for money all of our lives. And if we're not trading our money for time, we're doing it wrong. You can't take it with you. Nobody gets out of this life alive. Um, so as you get into your successful years where you're financially in a good place, think about how you're going to use that money to create time for the people
Yeah.
that you care about.
Yeah. And I will give myself a permission to answer one question I asked you,
Oh, yeah,
which is when I asked you when did you feel most alive? And for me, there are these moments in life which I often don't create them intentionally, but
right.
somehow I feel like I lived a lot of my life like this, incredible synchronicities, just because I love spontaneity and I love making one decision and changing into something else. And there was this one day where it felt like I wrote it in my notebook, a day that I can write a book about where I woke up and then I spoke to my dad, and my dad is going through something pretty rough right now, um, and our relationship is changing, and things have been happening, and he said that morning to me, he said, "There's nothing you can't do, but you just need to go step by step." And my dad is not a person that praises you often. Um,
Okay.
so this was very new to me. And that morning, I felt something profound that I was missing my whole life just came to me. And then I was in this train, and it feels like one day of flow. Um, and then I was in this train, and I have my meditation that I normally do. As I was sitting with that my dad told me, and suddenly um, there was these voices. It felt like a very spiritual experience where I started hearing, "You're not alone. There's nothing you cannot do." It's almost as if there's a rewiring happening of a internal support system that just wasn't there. But I felt it with my whole body. And then I went on a supervision session, my therapy supervision session, and then we did some exercises when I realized, oh my God, like look how much my history is contributing to this process and to this work. And then I was like, oh, I'm just a human being. I felt so beautifully small. I felt I felt so human in that moment where I realized that I contribute to that relationships, and the only thing that makes it different to my client is that I have this support, and I'm constantly questioning it, and that felt very humbling, and I felt it was so nice, and then I went and sat in front of St. Paul's Cathedral, and then I was just sitting there, and then a girl came to me out of nowhere, and I said to her, you know what? I just have to tell you, you're just so gorgeous. You're very beautiful. And then we started to get to know each other, and she was like, I asked, so how, what's your name? She's like, I'm Bella. And it's such a it's like those words that are coming that are somehow part of this experience. And then I said, well, I was planning to go to a Persian restaurant. Do you maybe want to come together? She ended up being Persian, and it ended up being her birthday. And then and then we had that moment, and then we walked back, and there was this guy who was writing poems on the street. So I asked him if he could write me a poem about gentleness and strength coming together. And then he wrote that poem. It's gorgeous. I'm not going to read it now. And then we go to the Tate, and in the Tate, I just realized that there was something on the window of the Tate, which is written, peace is power. And I felt like, well, this is the name, this is the title of the poem I just got. And and then the day continued to roll in such a way. I ended up in an embassy, I ended up dancing, and the day ended with someone telling me, seeing you dancing feels like you're giving color to this world. So it's kind of the words that I needed to hear. And when it comes to aliveness, and none of this was planned, obviously, like I could not predict that this is how the day is going to go, and it's not translatable in words. How am I able to do that? But I know that many of my friends are telling me you're the only person who would sit next to me and say, "Oh, hey, this is a person I just met, and this is my friend." And I feel like that there's something, and in that poem is something about love and openness to all. And I think that the inclusion and really curiosity about what makes us who we are, even when something feels dangerous, I think is so important and the core of my work. And that's why I kind of felt like I wanted to tell this story because there is something about allowing the unknown because sometimes it's not dangerous. And that's
Well, you
how I,
used a friend of mine that just coined, but you've already used it, aliveness.
yeah,
That's a great metric. Yeah. No, that's a great story. And that's, that's ignition. That's being alive in this world.
yeah,
That's the way we want to live most of our days if we can.
yeah. And I think this encounter is part of that. I mean, it was random. It was something that randomly brought you here to me, and I'm really glad that somehow my algorithm picked up the important thing and you
Yeah.
recognized it. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's so great to meet you. And let's stay in touch for sure. I have thoughts about your last story that I want to write to you because it's going to take me a little while to corroborate, but it's a big piece of what I'm thinking about right now. But it's around this notion of ignition. Like some days you're just fully lit and alive, and I don't know. I'm not sure all the things that go on in those, but I'm trying to investigate that. So
Yep.
if you're
You're,
okay, I'll ask more about it.
yeah, definitely.